silent all around. Maligned, if they get the chance. They were born in bloody circumstance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. A voice from the underground, given room to breathe, not but be drowned. So die if you get the chance. Better men than you've been, let this dance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. I have seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me away. To go, leave me, run like you never did. No, believe me, run like you've never run before.
Hello, good evening, and welcome. It's not just evening if you're listening in the car in the morning, or you're rattling around or out in the dog walk. So I'm getting a thumbs up from Jonny. I've done it right this time instead of saying it's good night. But we are recording at night, at evening time or night time. So I suppose it's easy for an old drop forward to get confused. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast. I'm Craig Manson. I'm hosting tonight. The Scottish Rugby Podcast is brought to you by Scottish Rugby Blog. Our podcast is part of the Sport Social Network, and don't forget to give us a follow or a like on your favourite podcast app. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to give us a follow on social media. You can find all the links on our site, www.scottishRugbyblog.co.uk. If you're listening on Apple and like what we do, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It always helps. And if you really like what we're doing and you want some more content, that might be a part of the Patreon too. You never know. Mind you, Greg Wallace has had problems with that.
Cameo videos.
Cameo videos. If you want more content and you want to support what we do, you can subscribe to our Patreon from just £3 a month. And one of our patrons did mention it the other day. It's not just £3 a month, it's £3 plus VAT per month.
It is.
Just to let you know.
£3.60 a month.
Full disclosure.
Still less than a coffee, though.
Yep, still less.
God damn the man.
A Baines macaroni pie. No, it might not be. Anyway, that's a different story.
I don't think it is.
That gives you access to our super secret Facebook group and the second part of tonight's podcast, as well as Patreon exclusive. If you want to listen to if you want to become a patron, you will listen to the second half of this podcast. We get a little bit more leery. We talk a little bit more freely about rugby and what's been going on, and also you get access to the much copied and what's the word? Much copied and I'm going
Imitated.
to imitated. That's the word I was looking for. Our hands in the ruck section, where we will air what has been ripping or knitting for the week. Right, I'm joined tonight by I was going to say gruesome twosome, but it's now the
nothing rhymes with gruesome.
Nothing.
No, let's not.
Not with that attitude.
There's no way. There's no way that we can carry this off. So let's not.
Do you want to be the meat in the threesome sandwich? I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. Anyway.
Yeah, see, this is
tonight,
no. Just don't.
I'm joined by the noisiest one of the lot of them at the moment. Is Jonny McGinty. Good evening, Jonny.
Hello, that's my personal guarantee. I am the noisiest. I'm also the man who knows the price of a Baines macaroni pie, and I can tell you that you would get more than one for £3.60.
Yeah, I'm going to. Okay, no problem at all. There we go. I'm also joined by Rory Baldwin. How you doing, Rory?
Good evening.
Again, a shirt. What's going on? I'm all excited. Every time I'm excited to see what.
Well, it's the end of my rugby season, so the Scotland top's in the wash.
Ah, right, okay.
I've got a Millennium Falcon t-shirt on, which if it gets too hot, I'll show the world.
We'll let you off for that. That's cool. And also, we're joined by Iain Hay. Good evening, Iain. How are you doing?
I'm freezing my whole off and I'm falling apart. How are you?
I can actually, after the heating was on in the showroom today, but it was rather cold today until it kind of got a bit warmer. Now I'm expecting rain, but anyway, that's a different story. George, I'm going to say your second name, and I've got George Piley.
That's what I was going for.
He has come out with a terrible trio, is what we're looking for. Yeah,
that's much better than suggesting any kind of threesome, to be honest.
I don't know, a dreamsome threesome.
Dreamsome threesome.
I was going to say
nightmarish
threesome, but I just don't like the threesome connotation at all, to be perfectly honest.
So we'll get on with the news quickly before
because you're one of the bits of bread, Jonny.
Before this moves on to the Patreon chat immediately, and we have to put this straight behind the paywall, we will move on with the news. We have had an AGM at the SRU, and we have a new president incoming in Keith Wallace, and a new vice president incoming in Hazel Swanky. Gentleman who's going to go first. Absolutely nothing to really talk about apart from those two people coming in from the SRU AGM, Jonny.
Yeah, I suppose we're quite lucky in a way that we got our bad financial news out of the way last week, because does seem to be AGM season amongst all the unions, and there's been some fairly not good news coming out of the rest of them, finance-wise. So we obviously talked about the Scottish finances last week. We don't need to tread over it again. At least we're not paying our CEO twice the money that we're given to all of the championship clubs just as a Christmas bonus, like some unions are. I don't know. I think in some ways it's good to be boring when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, Rory, we've had disappointing financial results, and in the past we've had a fair few things come up at AGM, but considering the bin fire that is Welsh rugby at the moment, our AGM's been quite quiet, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, there was obviously the thing that they decided to have it on a telly so that nobody could kind of shout at them. Yeah. So maybe they saw the bin fire and thought they would install a fireproof screen of sorts. So that it seemed to pass without incident, but that's because they designed it so that it couldn't have incidents.
Yeah, and I think it's the usual way. I'm surprised actually, Iain, that the Blazers managed to go on to technology and actually talk to you via screens. You're on mute, mate.
So that's because I was vaping. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Aye, well, they've learned how to plug stuff in. Given the financial report that came out, I suppose everyone is just trying to keep it low key. There's been a lot of changes, so maybe nobody's wanting to disrupt the boat too much. Actually, I would have thought with it being broadcast, then it gives somebody a chance if they want to be standoutish to stand up and complain. We'll see what happens. It's a new regime. We'll need to give them a bit of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, Jonny, Emerging Scotland it's been announced that Emerging Scotland will take on Italy, Italy's under-23s on the 14th of December at the Hive. One of the best stadiums there is in Scotland. They're going to be spending a whole week with all the Scotland international coaches, and it seems to be the latest thing to show that Scottish rugby, the men's side of Scottish rugby, is very inclusive, and they're trying to encourage the youngsters to come through.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I don't really understand where it fits in. It's obviously an idea that's copied from Emerging Ireland, but Emerging Ireland exists because the IRFU have a massive Leinster bias, and they throw a bone to the other three provinces by taking them away on a not real Ireland tour to kind of placate them for the fact that they're only picking Leinster players for the full squad. Scotland already has an under-20s team and only has 2 professional teams to choose from. So is Emerging Scotland just all the Edinburgh players that haven't made it into the full Scotland squad? Because realistically, anyone from Glasgow who's going to be in the Scotland squad is already in the full Scotland squad. I don't really know. I don't understand where it fits in, between the under-20s and the full international team. We just don't have that many players. It's a really, really weird thing to do, I think. But I don't know. You never know. I could be proved wrong.
Yeah, Iain, I think it's the one good thing, I suppose, is it's bringing a lot of maybe encouraging a lot of the younger players who don't get the access to the coaches as much, maybe getting the opportunity to spend some time and get some pointers from them, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a sort of good catch net for people who were regularly playing Super 6, but then they've gone off to pro clubs and they're not getting game time. But people who are over the age of 20. So, for example, we're going to preview the club games. Is that in this? It's in this. So, for example, Jack Mann is starting at number 8. And this guy who's been around for a while, Edinburgh earlier days, very unfortunate to be injured. I saw him playing for Heriots Blues in Super 6 at Bridgehaw, and it was just phenomenal. I think Sione Vioranu was playing the same game, but it was Jack Mann. He went off like a whippet a few times, and I spoke to the coaches after, and they're just like, yeah, this guy should be an international by now, but he's just been very unfortunate with injuries. So, I think something like that, it's a good place for someone like him or like Freddie Douglas, the much vaunted Freddie Douglas. And it is seeming to be filling in that gap where the Super 6, the abandonment of Super 6 is left, I think, to keep some of the top tier guys who aren't quite up to URC level, to keep them competitive at least.
Yeah. Moving further on, Rory, unfortunately, my love affair has had to end, and my preferred coach to take over Edinburgh is no longer. Brad Moore has been announced as the assistant coach of the Crusaders. He's gone back. We're not going to be able to wear Edinburgh branded flat caps.
No, which in itself is a bit of a travesty, but maybe it's time for you to forge your own path, Craig, and just get yourself a flat cap. We can't rely on Kiwis for our fashion choices too often, I don't think.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, he seemed to have a reasonable influence during his time with the Scotland team. He was rated down at the Scarlets. I think it would have been interesting to see him take over Edinburgh. I don't know whether you think Edinburgh need a backs orientated guy or a forwards orientated guy, but I think they need a new guy. certainly seems to be the consensus.
Yeah, and he did bring a lot to the Scotland squad, and I think our attack seemed to have renewed. At least they gave a bit of a freshen up, Jonny. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was always going to be quite an in-demand character. I'd heard his name batted around for the potentially about to be open Wales job as well. I think it's really interesting. It probably says a lot about maybe both Edinburgh and Wales and how they see themselves and how they rate themselves as a place for someone to go and get a job, that they were both looking at the same guy who kind of already was lined up with the Crusaders anyway, because I think he's been back in New Zealand for a little while. The Wales job's not even open, neither's the Edinburgh job. And kind of both of them thought maybe we'll just go out and get Brad Moore, and he's obviously had different plans. So it's a shame because he will be a big loss. He was useful at Scotland. I thought he had some really interesting ideas. Very strange that he's gone for an assistant coach's job in Super Rugby, because he was well lined up for a shot at head coaching somebody up here, but you never know. Maybe he just wants to be home.
Yeah, you never know. You might find actually that especially considering the Crusaders have had a fairly poor run of things, that you never know. He might have been promised the coach's job if he comes on and does well in the assistant coach. You never know. And the last thing in the news here, Iain, I'm going to give him to you because I'm sure you've got plenty to say about him. Joe Marler has retired fully. He is leaving rugby altogether.
You know what? I'm actually going to throw two other things in beforehand, Scottish related.
Well, deal with that first, and then you can throw your things in.
Maybe it was a rope-a-dope, Iain. Just consider that.
Yeah, well, but you said the final thing, so. well, the epilogue will. Is it? Epilogue. Anyway, all well. Oh, fair enough. Like he was.
You can do exactly what we were going to do with him and tell him to do one, and again crack on with the proper news, Iain.
Aye, he did well for himself as a player. I've made my feelings. His personal attributes might leave something of his ad. Anyway, screw him. Bad news: Connor Boyle, one of Edinburgh's exciting back row options, ACL's gone.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be out for 9-10 months, unfortunately. Yeah. Then Stafford McDowell has signed a new contract.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got that actually in my Glasgow chat.
I'm sorry, Craig. Well, maybe
Told
we
you
should.
Craig would have it in order.
Slightly better news for Edinburgh, though, is it does look like Duhan's sticking about. He's seen the offers from England and France and decided he doesn't fancy it.
Well, has he signed anything, Jonny?
He hasn't signed anything yet.
Because Tom Jordan really
But then
liked all the offers he was getting.
Hasn't signed anything yet, so...
Yeah. Well, again, he's in my Edinburgh chat. It's about to happen, so we'll have a quick discussion about that as well. See, this is the thing, ladies and gentlemen who are listening to the podcast. Usually, we have people who don't prepare for this podcast, and I've prepared absolutely pristinely. And I think I've just missed.
Hang on, but you've prepared, and you've put news items into the Glasgow and Edinburgh chat. I mean, that's pure planning on your part, to be honest.
The sheer absolute cheek of it. Anyway, we'll move on from the news, and we'll get into. We've not got much to say about Edinburgh, so we'll get that out of the way, and then we'll have a discussion because the team hasn't been announced yet for the game at the weekend. But Sean Everett is relishing the return to rugby with Benetton visiting on Saturday. There's lots been said, Rory, about Sean Everett and. Is he the Gatland of Scottish club rugby? Because lots and lots of people, including me, are saying that it's time for him to go, but he will still be there, no doubt, for a long time yet. So, Sean Everett, he's hopeful that he's going to make sure Duhan is going to stay, and he's relishing a return to rugby with Bennett, and it'll be interesting to see how we get on.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of, we talked about it kind of going into the autumn with the Edinburgh and how they're going to perform, the Edinburgh guys who've been underperforming for Edinburgh, how they're going to go. in Scotland level, and I think sort of everybody's fears were realised is that a lot of the Edinburgh guys suddenly started performing at Scotland level that they haven't been doing in their Edinburgh shirts. So it does beg the question about the coaching. I think, regardless of deals that he signed or whatever, I think Everett needs to somehow turn the team around before the end of the season, or they're gonna start looking at other names.
Yeah.
Whether he's the Warren Gatland of Scottish pro teams, is he repeatedly picking the wrong players? He's not really. He's picking the right players. He's not getting the best out of them.
Can we just say Warren Gatland was good the first time?
He was, if you like that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, winning.
Aye.
I mean, I prefer winning pretty, but winning ugly is still better than losing pretty. Because we did that quite a lot.
I quite like losing pretty.
Yeah, so, well,
Martyr.
while we're on it, Iain, Sam Skinner looks like he's back in the mix, along with James Lang. A couple of definitely two non-contact shy people within the Edinburgh squad. But it'll be good to see Sam Skinner back at least.
Yeah, obviously we're going to be talking about Scotland later on. Lock options are limited to age dependent, I would say. And Skinner, when he broke in, was he man of the match on his debut against Fiji, I think? And he looked the part, certainly, but we've seen this a bit too often since he's been at Edinburgh. Form has been sketchy, but again, you might have to put that down to the predicament of the team. But he's certainly a very, very talented player, a versatile player. He can do that lock blindside kind of job. But like most of Edinburgh players, we want to see more of him playing good. We know he can be good. Do it more often.
Absolutely. And Jonny, again, Sean Everett is telling us that Freddie Douglas is, how can I put it, his progression is being monitored apparently by Sean Everett, especially considering the fact that we're not going to have everyone available to us at the weekend. Surely we're going to see this guy playing an Edinburgh shirt.
You would think so. Like, when the progression that you're monitoring includes playing twice for your country in the space of a week. Now, admittedly, one of those were the A's, but you're still talking about playing twice for Scotland, and he's not played for Edinburgh yet. Like, what progression are you waiting to see exactly? This is one of the problems I think that we have with Sean Everett is he says stuff like that, and he's talking about things that we can all see. So at some point, you have to explain why you're saying things like that, because we've seen Freddie Douglas. We saw him against Portugal. He looked relatively comfortable for a guy his age coming into the international stage, albeit against Portugal. So what progression is it that you're monitoring that Gregor Townsend thinks he's capable of international rugby, but you won't play him in the URC? What does that mean? I think, and I'm not even an Edinburgh fan, and I'm frustrated by that sort of thing, like comments like that. So I can see why it breeds frustration for Edinburgh fans, because I don't understand what he means by that.
I saw him getting smashed by about 45 points by the Ayrshire Bulls, and he was still one of the best players on the park. He's like 17, 18. He is unreal talent. It's just, we're breeding good open sides. But there's this insistence on going, oh no, but I've stuck by these boys before. These guys have done me well. No, Sean, you're losing a lot.
Yeah, I think
has he lost 11 in a row?
No,
that would put the Gatland's metaphor to bed.
Yeah, he's not yet.
But he's probably not on like a third of that wage.
Yeah. And the concerning thing is Benetton, as we all know, Benetton are a team that everyone can chip over very, very easily. And no matter, because John's not here, so I have to say it, that that apparently Italian teams are not to be taken seriously. But I take them incredibly serious, and especially Benetton, because they could maybe be a URC. They could be the first Italian squad to bring the URC title to Italy. You never know. Rory, I think I had a question for you, and it's totally rushed out of my head there for a second while we're talking about Italy.
Unlikely, I'll know the answer anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll move on, seeing as I've totally and utterly frozen that question out the top of my head there for a second. So we will see how we get on with Edinburgh v Benetton. The team will be announced tomorrow, and we'll see who of the exactly. I know exactly what I was going to discuss. Who of the returning Scotland internationals are going to play? Rory, that's the big thing I was going to say. We'll talk about Glasgow fairly, in a minute. But putting international squad players straight into the team for a game a week after they've played an international game, it does seem a bit like a bit of a scrabble to try and win something, along with the other side of things. It does. This is the sort of time that you expect your youngsters to be given more time, like Freddie Douglas, and it doesn't seem like that's going to happen with Sean Everett. Yeah,
I mean, he's probably in a trickier position than Franco over at Glasgow, in that, like you say, he needs those results. So he's if he's got these guys available and they're not sort of mandatory rested or anything, he's probably going to go in. I'd imagine, like Sir Jamie Ritchie would probably want to play anyway, because he found some form last weekend, and he'll probably want to keep that kind of going. It's tough on a guy like Freddie Douglas or Ben Muncaster, who are kind of in those positions, that they might not get the chance that they should maybe get. But I think for Edinburgh, they kind of need to win is kind of overrides the developing talent mandate at the moment.
Yeah. Well, we will rattle along the M8, and Jonny, Glasgow, they have announced their team, and they take on Scarlets on, I think it's Friday night, isn't it?
Yeah, tomorrow night.
Yeah, tomorrow night. And Stafford, as I said, Stafford McDowell is on a high. He's extended his contract. No time given for how long they've extended it. So is that just a year to keep him going, to see how he gets on, Jonny?
I think usually when they don't say anything, it usually is a year or at most 2 years, because if somebody gets a long-term deal, they like to talk about how it's a long-term deal, which is fair enough. It's part of the job. It's what you're paying your media people to do. A little bit more information would have been nice, but also it's nice to have staff back. So I'm not going to complain too much about it.
Yeah. And Iain, the team has been announced for the Scarlets game, and as John, I know John Anderson's not available tonight, and I was expecting him to come on and say the Bin Juice 15 has been released onto Scarlets. But with 3 impressive youngsters making their debut, it's they still have some quality players in there with Hastings. Tom Jordan is playing as well, etc. It's not massively a Bin Juice 15, is it?
No, you know what? I was trying to load the team up there on X, formerly known as Twitter, and the thing shut on me. So I've now gone to Facebook. Stafford McDowell, I don't know. I think it might be. I mean, this is a hometown boy. He seems like he doesn't want to go anywhere. I also think he knows his role in the squad. Everyone's secondary to Hughie Pilotu, aren't they? And with Tom Jordan going, he's probably going to get a bit more game time. But no, when I was looking at the team, I just think forward pack, I was like, well, that's a bit inexperienced. Then I saw the back line. I was like, that's going to be enough. Yeah. That's absolutely crazy. It's hard to pick, really. Obviously, I've said Hughie Pilotu would be 12-13. Jordan McDowell is not much below that, then you've got Josh Mackay. We all know my opinions on him. Best ever Glasgow Warriors fullback. Seb Cancellieri's back, and Kyle Rowe, who is just... I think Kyle Rowe has exceeded all expectations of what we'd want from him. Try machine. So I think Scarlett's going to have to bring some damn good game to stop that, because we've taken Scarlett's apart down in their own patch last season with a similar backline, and yeah, I do not imagine things going much different. Who is kicking the recycling all over the place there?
I think it's Johnny's throwing things around, but
it's Minnie's rugby. How do you move it?
Rory, totally in the opposite to Edinburgh. Glasgow giving 3 youngsters their debut, as I said. Finn Richardson at tight head, in to give Xander some well-needed time off. Now, I'm going to get this absolutely and utterly wrong, so please don't write in or call me out for it. Jari Oguntobiuchu?
Jamie Lyle.
I'm not going to be a Jamie Lyle. I have no chance to be in it. And also Mackenzie Duncan has got the chance from the bench. It's really nice to see Franco bringing some youth through and giving them the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just talked about it there. Edinburgh can't really afford it, but Glasgow to an extent kind of can. So they're given a, it's a, as Iain says, a very classy backline, sort of behind quite an experimental looking pack, but there's still some he's still got Ali Miller, Johnny Matthews in there. I think as Iain says, it should be enough. Henko Venter, yeah. So there's
Henko Venter, massively underrated in my opinion.
The boy's a thug, isn't he?
Yeah, big lad for a 7, but then he's South African, isn't he? So he's back to front.
So if you just saw Henko Venter playing rugby, you were like, yeah, he's South African. So he just wants to pet people as soon as possible.
My favourite thing, did you see the video that Glasgow put out on socials a few weeks ago? The what's your name and what's your nickname in the squad video? It's hilarious. So they do this like
it's something I regularly do is watch Glasgow videos.
You should. So he's stopping people and he's saying like, "What's your name and what's your nickname in the squad?" And it's like he stops Hugh Jones and Hugh goes, "Oh, my name's Hugh Jones. The squad calls me Shug." And then Patrick Schickerling gets stopped and he goes, "My name's Patrick Schickerling, but they call me Chicken Wing because it makes it easier to say my surname." And then he stopped Henko and he goes, "My name's Henko Venter. The squad calls me Henko Venter." It's just like so dead and like clearly does not take any nonsense from anyone.
And he talks about himself in the third person.
They call me Mr. Venter.
I would love that. I would love that so much.
Well, does he play in second row now and then? Because I know that Mario Toji talks about himself in the third person. Maybe it's a second row thing. Maybe it's the Grant Gilchrist likes to take line out options. At the back. But anyway, we've got what I'm expecting from all three of you now is a little bit of a production as we close up the public side of the pod. We expect so we'll start going around the room. We'll start off with Johnny. We're expecting wins for both. A loss for Edinburgh. What are you thinking?
I think a win for both is pretty achievable, is almost expected. I think it says a lot about what the players in Edinburgh think of Sean Everett if they don't win. I think the way that the guys have played the last 4 weeks shows that they are a good enough team to beat Benetton, and if they don't beat Benetton, I'd be asking some serious questions about how that's happened with Sean Everett. I think Glasgow, this might come back to bite me. I think that's a bit more of a formality than the Edinburgh one. I think the Edinburgh one's the one that's interesting to watch. And I actually think I don't think the result should be in doubt. So I think whether they win or not says a lot about how things are going in the Edinburgh setup.
Yeah. Iain?
I do predict both teams will win. I think one will win far more comfortably than the other. I think Edinburgh will end up sort of scraping it. I think it will be a narrow bonus point victory. I've not looked at the weather, but I think it'll be quite high scoring. But there's enough individual talent there in backs with the, if we. Well, this is one thing that about team selection. There's European block. There's 2 European games, and then the 1872 doubleheader. Players have rest protocols to Tier 2. So it's interesting to see what Edinburgh will go with. We don't know that yet. But I know that Jamie Ritchie wants to play. I think it would be wise against a team like Benetton, who are a rival to Edinburgh, and that kind of push for the last playoff spot. So I think they would be wise to go strong, and I think they would just have enough individual talent to sneak it. I've not actually seen the Scars team yet, but like I said, I expect Glasgow to, dish out a bit of a doing.
Yeah, and it will definitely point out to which which competition Sean Everett prefers. If we see a fairly hefty international lane squad this weekend, rather than you'll think he's probably not going to take the European Challenge Cup as serious as the URC. And Rory, your thoughts for the weekend?
Yeah, I reckon Glasgow will do the business. Edinburgh, I'm less sure about. As Iain says, it's kind of going to depend on what team he puts out. If he puts out a decent team, yeah, I think they should be enough for Benetton, but it is a bit of a banana skin, so he shouldn't be complacent.
Absolutely. So we're going to finish up at that, and we're going to move on to the Patreon side of the pod, and we'll talk about Scotland v Australia, and what that means for the Six Nations. So if you've enjoyed what you've listened to, well, I'm sorry, but I've listened to me struggling with my words today for some reason, and listening to Jonny rearrange his furniture in his room. If you like what you've listened to, there's more of that on the Patreon side of things. And I want to just first of all thank Johnny McGinty, Iain Hay, and Rory Baldwin for joining me tonight. And thank you very much for tuning in. And we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Thanks for hosting, Craig. Cheers, folks.
Bye.